You're tuning in to Barski-Lyn Adventures. Welcome to our little corner of the bookish community. Hello, beautiful people of the bookish persuasion. Thank you so much for joining us today as we talk about reading, writing, and publishing. I'm C.H. Lynn, author of the Abradia series, The Old Tales, Miss Bell's Travel Guides, and Spooky Cat Stories. With me, as always, is my incredible co-host,
Tracy Barski. I am the author of The Alternate Chronicles and Love is Murder and Love Undercover.
We are readers, writers, mothers, and wives, and we're here today discussing kind of ourselves. This is our first ever episode. A little nerve-wracking, but also very exciting. And we're kind of going to give you our credentials. That's sort of the point of today's episode, is to talk about how we got into the indie publishing business, how it all started, why we're here, and why this content is actually going to be useful for people instead of just, there's a lot of podcasts out there. We're not just two people talking out of our butts.
But we do that too sometimes.
Sometimes. Anyway.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
We're awkwardly drinking our coffee because we don't know what to do with our hands. If you're watching this on video, I did a very Ricky Bobby move.
So
indie publishing.
Why don't I just timeline-wise, I'll start.
Okay.
Because of the first attempt at Abradia.
Because her hair is longer.
Because my hair is longer. That's why I'm starting. So, folks, I was 19. I finished writing a book. I thought it was amazing. It's amazing now.
It probably was at the time, too.
At the time, for a 19-year-old, it was amazing. And I really wanted to publish, and I'm not a patient person. So I reached out to a handful of traditional publishing houses, as well as several agents, got basically nowhere, and decided, cool, I'm going to attempt to do it myself. Turns out when you put your phone number into forms on the internet, even for respectable publishing houses, other people get them. So I got phone calls from vanity publishing companies and accepted an offer from one and made a really costly lesson, essentially. So I did vanity publishing. Vanity publishing has often been mistaken for indie publishing.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of people fall prey to it.
Yes.
You end up spending thousands of dollars.
Yep.
For somebody else to do a lot of the work, but the workmanship is not always
not great. And truly not even a lot of the work. They did formatting and the cover. There was no editing. There was no proofreading.
Mm-hmm.
It was buying an ISBN number, but I'm sure that they buy them by the 10,000. And so they're $1 a piece. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I was 19. I spent well over $1,000, and did vanity publishing.
Which is not bad for vanity publishing.
Not bad at all.
I have friends who have spent $5,000 to $7,000 through vanity publishers, which, by the way, if you're doing indie publishing and you spend that much money, you're getting so much out of that price. Whereas the friends that I've had who did this also did not get editing. That was an additional cost to them if they even did it. But,
if you have that kind of money to put into publishing, go indie. Go indie.
Because you're going to get way more out of that price range than you are from
significantly more bang for your buck. Mm-hmm. So that was my 19-year-old self, wrote the first book in the Abradia series. It was a sickeningly pink cover, and I like pink a lot. Pink is one of my favorite colors. It was too pink. The book is not pink.
And it gives the wrong vibe.
It gives the wrong vibe, absolutely.
I've seen that cover, and I'm like, I don't understand.
It's also significantly shorter, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
So I was 19. I did vanity publishing. It didn't go great. I didn't sell any copies because how could I? I didn't know how to do marketing, and social media marketing was not what it is today. Mm-hmm. It didn't go well. So it
For clarification, this is about 10, 11 years ago.
This is 11 years ago, almost 12.
And the indie world, for one, is very different.
So different.
in the last
has blown up in the last decade
significantly.
Yep.
And then also social media 10 years ago. Think about that. I think 10 years ago I was barely getting onto Instagram, and I was like, I don't understand how this works.
TikTok didn't exist 10 years ago, did
No,
it?
it didn't.
Okay.
You had Twitter and Facebook, and then Instagram had just started getting going.
Right,
that's about when I was... I would see people posting these pictures that were, that one filter that everybody, that vintagey filter.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody uses. It was like, these look
on
so
breakfast.
cool.
It was that one filter on breakfast, and that was it.
Yes. And so it vastly different.
Yeah, it's a hugely different.
As an indie author,
yes.
Whether you self-publish or indie or vanity publish.
Yeah, it's incredibly different. But yeah, so that was me a decade ago. And then we'll flash forward because absolutely nothing happened in terms of publishing between then and now. I rewrote the book several times. I wrote another book. I had short stories and stuff like that, but none of it was published. Mm-hmm. So skipping over a huge chunk of time, we're now in 2019, and I had just finished Lacey Goes to Tokyo, which is the first of Miss Bell's travel guides. And I really wanted to actually publish this time. My husband and I also had a little bit of a let's not spend over $1,000 to vanity publish again. I was like, fair, that's fair. So I reached out to a bunch of different traditional houses and agents, and one that my aunt actually works with. I swear it wasn't nepotism, but one that my aunt actually works with as an editor and a copy editor picked up the book, which is amazing, and it was huge, and I felt so giddy, and I signed a contract, and I was like, awesome. I worked at a Barnes & Noble at the time. I figured they'll be able to put it on the shelf, even though it's a smaller publishing house. And the publishing house is very sweet, and I'm still friends with all the people who work there, and the owner is an amazing woman. She's got a really cool thriller series, but she's out of Ireland, and they have different laws about publishing, including they have a requirement where you have to stock a specific number of books in store in the UK to have physical copies printed. Mm. So I was unable to get physical copies of the book. That's sort of the only negative on that end. Everything else about...
Basically meaning that she could only have ebooks.
I could only have ebooks, yes. Everything else about why it didn't work was fully on me. I had no clue about social media. Still, I tried doing marketing. It didn't go well. I didn't know how to do Facebook. Didn't know anything about Instagram. Maybe had 100 followers at the time, and was nothing. It was nothing. A big month for me was a 99-cent sale, and I sold 8 copies. And I was like, yes, that's the dream. That's not the dream, turns out. And so I bought the rights back last year, and Tracy redid the cover, and now the second book of that is out, and that's not the point of the story.
I also did a proofread.
Yes, you also re-proofread, which was lovely.
Because there is something to be said about rules in the U.S. versus the UK. Mm-hmm. I mean, the Chicago Manual of Style, Chicago is in America, for one.
Turns out, Chicago is in America.
If you didn't know... You're welcome.
That's the title of the episode. Chicago is in America.
If you didn't know.
If you didn't know. Oh, that one welcome. Too. That's a good title.
Yes. So that makes a difference.
Yeah. So I ended up buying the rights back. But those were my first experiences with the publishing world in general. So if we're looking at number of... not necessarily all mistakes, but number of things to go wrong and ways to go wrong and not have your dream be what you want it to be. Mm-hmm. I've got the resume for it. I've got a resume of here mistakes.
Yours hasn't been so...
Yeah.
Like we said, the amount that you put up in that first
I wasn't endeavor, out $5,000 to $10,000.
And then you didn't have a publishing house that was... screwing you over.
Yeah, they were also, also the publishing house was absolutely amazing when it came to buying back the rights. Mm-hmm. They gave me a prorated discount, and they gave me back the cover rights as well, and the cover was stunning, but it was not to genre in the way that I felt it should have been. That sounded bad. the cover that Tracy made more fits the genre than the cover that was previously made. That was a bit more of a romantic cover. And I did have some reviews saying I thought this was going to have romance. The series does not have romance.
No.
The book does not have
romance. The series itself
will have romance.
A little bit, but that's not the focus.
Yeah, that's not the point of it.
And so, she doesn't want to mislead readers.
Exactly. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I have a stack of things that have gone wrong in the publishing world and a stack of lessons learned that really help put things in perspective for me now. And made the first year of publishing. I published Abradia April of 2023. So it's been less than a year for me. And it's made everything that's happened this last year that much more special for me because I did the 2 alternate routes that didn't work out.
So she has some authority on
what not to do.
What not to do and
I don't know if y'all heard that, but my dog is upset at the door.
And
he's fine.
He's like, I would like to be in this podcast, please. Okay, thanks. Bye. You have all the roads to kind of be able to compare and be like, this is why I think this is the better way to go. Yeah.
It took a lot of side streets before I got to the highway, but I'm on the highway. We're cruising, baby.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's the beginning of my publishing journey. And then we'll skip back to me after we do you because you...
Do me.
Tracy. Not on video. Because your publishing story picks up after 2019, after I did traditional publishing. And yours is incredibly different.
Very different.
Tell us. Tell us about it. Tell us what happened.
I will say this. I had never planned to publish. I mean, it was sort of a maybe someday if I can make it happen, but I'm also not the sort of person, like, if it's a real big uphill battle, I just, most of the time I'm like, I like the path of least resistance. It's just my personality. So it was not really much of a goal. It was sort of like, that would be nice someday, maybe.
Sort of a pipe dream idea, kind of.
Yeah, and something that I didn't anticipate necessarily pursuing. So my first book that I published, I wrote close to probably 10 or more years ago, actually, and had shared it with a couple of friends, one of whom is also a published author. And she just had really good insight on storytelling and all of those things. So I got a lot of feedback from her, which was really great. And at the time we were talking about like what it would look like to publish. But again, this was over 10 years ago when the self-publishing world was just not great.
Yeah, it was not great. It was either just starting for a lot of people or there were not freelance editors. There was not a place to find and buy good to-market, to-genre covers.
And
it was a shit show.
The quality of stories and writing was not super great because there was nothing to regulate it. And not to say that there weren't some gems out there. There certainly were. I just did not encounter them. So self-publishing was not really on my radar. I very, very briefly did some querying of agents, but it was...
That's not the path of least resistance at all. Querying is hard.
Yeah. It was just something that I was like, well, I'm not enjoying this and I don't really care enough. And so a number of years go by and then probably, I think it was 2017, 16, 17, something like that. I was in a writer group. They were all women who were like my mom's age. Just because it just happened to be that they were people I knew really well and they were meeting together to do writing things. They were not writing fiction, but it was the only thing I had at the time. And they are still really lovely ladies that two of them I am still in contact with, one I edit for on a regular basis. But they read my novel and they really liked it and really encouraged me to try and publish it. And one of them had done a vanity publisher for her nonfiction books, and she was encouraging me to go that path. This was a company that they did a lot more for you than just, but they also didn't provide editing. But it was an 18-month long program that they walk you through the entire process of drafting, editing, getting all of the
definitely
things.
A higher quality vanity publishing,
several thousand
still several
dollars. And I was like, and at this time I had very young children, like babies. And I just knew spending that kind of money to put my book out was not feasible when I couldn't devote the time and energy to marketing myself. And I also didn't want to spend that time when I was
or that kind of money.
Yes.
You can't spend that kind of money if you've got a 6-month-old. You just, unless you come from money, you just can't.
Yes. So I put that off again. And then in 2021, the end of 21, so at some point that year, I had joined Moms Who Write on Facebook. Just because I'm like, well, I'm a mom who writes. That's how I talk inside my head, just so you know.
Yeah. The inner monologue.
I was in this group, and there are a variety of people in the process. They're traditionally published, there are self-published, there are ones who are still writing, who haven't finished a book, who have finished dozens of books.
At all stages.
All stages. Yeah. And the number of posts I was seeing where people were just talking about what you could do on your own was pretty inspiring. And I saw someone who said something along the lines of like, I like to play around and make my own covers just to motivate myself to finish a book, whatever.
You took that and ran with it.
See, what happened was I went and got the free version of Canva. I got some images from Shutterstock, played around with the idea of a cover, played around a little bit with titles, that kind of thing. But I made a cover and I stopped in my tracks and was like, this looks really freaking cool. So I was like, this would be really neat if I could publish my book and just have it on my shelf. I didn't care if anybody bought it. I knew my mom would buy it because thanks, Mom.
Oh, I gotta pop in real quick and say also 10 years ago, KDP barely started.
Right.
Barely a thing.
That's Kindle Direct Publishing. So that's what you publish your books through on Amazon. Yeah. So that's
the free route of publishing.
And this was another reason why I was able to do the things that I was, because I saw this cover, felt really strongly. I was like, I want to have this book on my shelf, even if it's just for me. And I can tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a published author. Even though it was, I was anticipating being like, I will sell 10 copies and that will be the end of it.
And it'll be all to people I know.
Yes. And then I approached my husband and I'm like, what do you think about this? And he was like, I think you should do it. That sounds great. But I went about it in the cheapest possible way because I did not want to be in the hole with this. Luckily, apparently, this was a surprise to me. Making this cover was super fun and I really enjoyed it. And it was a learning curve for me because I did not understand how any of this worked. And I also set up stuff on KDP to see if I could do it.
Yeah. Just to play with the system and be like, is this possible?
November 2021. I am setting all this up, messing around, doing all these things. It took me way longer than it normally would take. Nowadays, it takes me 5 seconds to do most of these things because I know what I'm doing now.
It's a 10-minute process.
But at the time, it was like a week-long process of figuring out how to size a cover, all of that stuff. In the meantime, so I'm doing this.
So November.
Yes, I'm doing this all as cheaply as possible. I didn't put much money into publishing my first book. I did the cover, I set it all up on KDP, and then I went to work obsessively rereading and refining my first book.
And we should jump in here also to say that you have the education to edit and proofread your own work.
Yes.
I do not
recommend this for everyone.
Even if you have the training and the schooling to be a professional editor, editing your own work is an entirely different bag.
Very, very different. And especially, like, I don't typically miss a lot of things when I do proofreads. When it's your own work, it's a totally different story. But I will say that this book had been through several rounds of critiques with multiple people.
It was the perfect book to do your own stuff with.
Yes. Yeah. So, and I'd had it beta read, all of these things, but I still went through it a gajillion times. So had all of this set up, did it through KDP, so it was free. I think it cost me $30 or $50 to do the whole thing because I bought the image to make my cover.
Yeah, bought the rights to the image.
I used Canva, their free version, put it on KDP, did all of this stuff, had the book out by the end of January. We're sitting at
November to January.
Yes, almost exactly 2 years ago when I published it, and that was after 2 months. And
since then, so just jumping back to the whole point of this first episode, since then, Tracy, you've sold over 1,200 books?
Yeah.
You have a complete trilogy from that first one. You also have a standalone from the same series.
Yeah.
You have a serial killer rom-com that we wrote together, and you have a absolute rom-com coming out next month. So in 2 years, our listeners should bear in mind most, I think it's 93% of authors sell, 12 copies? And that's probably a weak statistic at this point.
And also bear in mind, traditionally published authors, unless you're a New York Times bestseller, a lot of them wasn't it something like it's a few
50,
hundred?
Yeah, it's like 50 total. In the first year, maybe a couple hundred total.
Yeah.
So it's not. You've blown those numbers out of the water.
I'm not going to say that I, am doing like insane, but this is, and I will say this too. A lot of authors and a lot of people will advise you, and I would agree with them for the most part, that you build your following on social media platforms, build up hype and anticipation. Tracy didn't do those things because
neither did I.
Like I said, I published on a whim in a 2-month period, started my social media right beforehand, didn't know what to do with it because I don't do a lot with social media in the first place.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't take pictures of stuff.
And experience in marketing in any way.
But because at the time it's, Instagram changes a lot with what's popular and what's not. But Reels were getting really popular, and I jumped on that and then found I had a knack for it, and I enjoyed doing it. So I hit Reels really hard. I also really, really networked pretty hard with other authors, readers, that sort of thing, and it took off. And this was, we're adding up numbers that
2 years
now,
worth. Yeah.
Now, having done sales at like signings at Barnes & Noble. But prior to the Barnes & Noble thing, I was sitting pretty much around at 1,000 copies sold.
Yeah.
And so that was just luck for some of it. And some of it was the hard work on the back end. But I also am just really blessed with a supportive community.
Yeah, part of that though, I really don't want you to sell yourself short, because part of being in a supportive community is putting support back into it, right? There are plenty of authors and readers and just people online who will fly on the wall, who will be there, but they're not participating and they're not having conversation. Right. And, you do a follow back, and then the next hour you get a DM saying, would you like to buy a copy of my book? And you're like, I don't know you. And that's not for those of you listening, for the authors out there, if you're just starting, that is not how you do that.
Right.
That is improper etiquette.
Right. The way to do it is really to
participate.
Engage.
Yeah, fully to participate.
Genuinely. And that's the thing, is like, you can't just post about your books, post Reels all the time, and then expect to get what. It takes active participation. That's what was helping me, was I was interacting with other authors, commenting on their posts, and not just
Not just
smoke up their butts either.
Not just a smiley face or a looks like a good book, but an actual, like, that is a gorgeous cover. Mm-hmm. How did you get that?
Yeah.
That is amazing formatting. What format did you use? Or I really like the reels that you use, mm-hmm. blah, blah, blah. And we encourage people. We were doing lives on Instagram for a while, but even just general posts, we encourage every level of author to reach out, mm-hmm. to ask questions and to communicate.
Yeah.
But this another thing to bear in mind if you're just joining the community is to not only be asking questions about what you can do with your work, mm-hmm. but to ask people questions that are about them.
Yeah.
It's basic communication. It's truly just networking in any community, in any system, any kind of mm-hmm. trying to make friends it's about them. It's not about you. Mm-hmm. And you will find people who want it to be about you. Mm-hmm. And that's awesome. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to find those people if you come at it from that standpoint.
Yeah. Yep.
We've got about 5 minutes left for our main feed. That's what it's called. This is our first episode. Can you tell? We've got 5 minutes left for our main feed. So I'm going to jump real quick into April of 2023 for me. So I went on to Kindle Vella, which is a program that we will talk about on here a lot. And we'll give rundowns of how to do it and what to do and what it is and all that. I raised the money to publish my book using Kindle Vella. I'll leave it at that. You can find info online, ask questions in the comments. We will do an episode about it very soon.
If you follow us on Instagram, we have
a live video that is on Instagram that is mm-hmm. about all of the things Kindle Vella. Mm-hmm. But I was able to pay for, it was almost $700 for my cover. The hardcover has a dust jacket, and under the dust jacket is just a beautiful design and image, and it matches up with the chapter headers. All of these things that were the dream. All of these things that where I see it in another book and I'm like, that is what I want. Mm-hmm. This is the epic story I want to tell. This is how I want to tell it. I want girlies who love hardcovers to latch onto that, have that be a thing. I want the people who prefer paperbacks to still get all of these beautiful things within the book. Mm-hmm. I want there to be a map. I made a map. I made a couple maps. They're fun.
I'm the map.
I'm a map. All of these things.
That was a Brian Regan reference for anybody who's a comedy fan. And Dora the Explorer.
That's where I went. So that was the goal, and I was able to achieve it because I had used this other program to make money mm-hmm. to get there. Mm-hmm. Regardless, I had the book. And mm-hmm. so April 1st, a week before I turned 30, I put it out there. I had a launch party. I was, again, super blessed with the community that I had made in this new city that I had moved to a year ago. I didn't know anybody. And I had so many people at the launch party that it absolutely blew my mind. I didn't realize I had that many friends. And it still shakes me to this day. And I'm really happy about it. Anyway. And from there, it truly snowballed. Tracy and I started spending a lot of time together. Mm-hmm. We have children the same age. They play together while we write, and we'll do many episodes about how to make momming and authoring work, because it's hard, mm-hmm. and it takes practice, mm-hmm. and it takes rewiring your brain to be able to do things in a different way. Mm-hmm. Anyway.
And bear in mind that we are not the kind of moms who are like, we throw our kids in daycare and do this. Like, we keep them around, and we're also very intentional parents.
Yes.
So it's not like we're like, go away, I'm writing right
now.
we're
not sticking them in front of the boob tube to get words on paper. Right. For sure. And we'll definitely have an episode about momming mm-hmm. and how to do that and be an author, and the different community systems that we use, the mm-hmm. different tools that we use, and how we are very conscious and present with our kids in the times that we're not writing, mm-hmm. because part of that mom guilt that every mom knows is if you're working, especially, mm-hmm. you're away from your kids. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay. Anyway, that's a different episode.
Yes.
So in the last year, I wrote the second book in that series and published it. I wrote our rebranded Lacey Goes to Tokyo, cover by Tracy Barski. Peru Fred by Tracy Barski. Wrote Damon Goes to Peru, the second in that series. 2 short stories came out, and then Tracy and I wrote Love is Murder together, which is right here, serial killer rom-com. It took us a month and a half to write, proofread, and publish the book. Tracy made the cover for this one as well. Her proofreading and editorial skills absolutely knocked it out of the park in terms of ease of publishing. We've got like 2 minutes left. Yeah. I don't know where else to go with that. Social media has also exploded for me in the last year.
Just the fact, I think what we can boil it down to is like, this is our journey. So we've put out a lot of books. It's not like we're first time authors. And
yes, we have the experience behind it.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've done the process multiple times, which means that we know the ins and outs, the pitfalls.
Yeah, I had
I had to figure out how to unpublish and republish my books with my own ISBNs, which we can talk more about in future episodes.
I had a horrible typo in Lacey Goes to Tokyo that was a horrible misprint for the first 30 copies of the book. We've got the experience. We're here to talk to you about it. We're going to go over so many different topics on this podcast. We're going to have guests. We're going to talk genres and publishing and writing and the craft, and we're going to have a lot of laughs, and we're going to have a really good time, and we hope that you join us every step of the way. If you enjoyed this, if you liked listening to the podcast or watching the podcast, head on over to our Patreon, because we are going to have another 10 to 15 minute chat of continuing to talk about our story and our progression and why you should pay attention to what we say at all. Thank you so much for listening and watching. All of the things that people say at the end of these. Thumbs up, subscribe, comment any questions that you have. Find us on social media. Tell us we're pretty. Find us on social media. I'm at chlyn.author. At author Tracy Barski.
I don't like.
And check out our works if you want to see how that our words actually match up.
We'll bring you to all of my stuff.
Yeah, chlyn.com. All of the links will be found in all of the places that this podcast is found.
We'll post our website links in the description.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Links. This is so exciting. I'm so excited to do this with you. Whew.
Yes.
All right, folks. Thanks for being with us.
I sound excited.
Have a good one. Thank you so much for tuning in. For more and to check out our after show, The Epilogue, head over to patreon.com/Barski-Lyn Adventures. We'll see you next time.